All right, let's take a look now at the tail of the tape for the major pieces of these two teams as we approach opening night of the season. Let's start with the offense. Who's got the better offense between the Ravens and the Chiefs, Myles?
Well, I mean, with apologies to the Ravens, whose offense I think is very good. But look, we didn't just spend the last 10 minutes praising Patrick Mahomes for no reason. When you've got that guy, that makes you the better offense pretty much inherently. And, I think given the speed element that is now there with Xavier Worthy, with Hollywood Brown when he returns, that really does make things different. Now, the other thing that we got with the Chiefs is a young left tackle. And that is something that I think you got to pay attention to, especially going up against a Ravens defense. But by all accounts, he's done such a good job over the course of the offseason program, training camp, that especially when you have Patrick Mahomes and his experience, I think that they're going to be all right there. So I would say the Chiefs.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Kansas City Chiefs. They've got a sneaky good running game that they don't use as much as maybe they could or arguably should, but do you really need to do it when you've got what essentially is a simulated and effective running game in short passes to Travis Kelce or anyone else that happens to be open underneath? You've got the speedy receivers now, and it's ultimately Mahomes. It comes back to Mahomes. Until somebody can knock him off the top of the mountain, anytime it's Chiefs or that team, Chiefs or this team, I'm going to be inclined to favor the Chiefs, especially on the offensive side of the ball. All right, that part's easy. Defensively, who's got the better of it between these two teams?
This one's tough because the Ravens are great on defense, and I think that there's an expectation that they will continue to be. But it goes back to what I was saying a little bit earlier in the segment. When you have a new defensive coordinator, despite how good I think he's going to be eventually, I think that there's going to be a bit of an adjustment period there. And so because Steve Spagnuolo has the experience, right? He's been there for as many years as he's been there. They've won championships with him. And that defense for the Chiefs was as good as any last year. Now, they lost L'Jarius Sneed, yes, but I think when you've got a guy like Trent McDuffie, who's just an absolute dog, man, I mean, you're going to be able to be okay at corner. So I would give the edge, a slight edge, to the Chiefs.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, from a personnel standpoint, I think it hurts the Ravens to lose Patrick Queen, especially in the division to the Steelers. He's going to be extra motivated that the Ravens didn't want to keep him around. They've still got some great pieces, but their defense every year gets better over time. And this year, there's reason for it not to be 85 Bears right out of the gates because of the changing coordinator. It's going to take a little time to get to as good as it's going to be. Whereas the Chiefs, I think bringing back your coordinators, think about that. Year after year, they just keep coming back. Yep. None of these guys are serious candidates to be head coaches at this point, so they just keep coming back. And having that continuity and stability, having Chris Jones available last year, he was at the game in a suite watching the festivities because he was holding out. I think that it all adds up to the Chiefs having a slightly better defense. All right, special teams. Who do you have?
I'm going to take the Ravens here, and it's mostly because Justin Tucker is the greatest kicker of all time, right? And Harrison Butker is quite good in his own right, but I think between that and you got Hardy, who is a really good return guy, and this is another one of these elements that we just kind of don't know. Like that opening kickoff might be really interesting because if Harrison Butker doesn't bang the ball out of the end zone, who knows what that thing is going to look like? So that's going to be an interesting element to it. Hardman, also a good return guy for the Chiefs. The fact that he's back, I mean, he also has the speed element, not necessarily known for catching it as well as Hollywood Brown or Xavier Worthy either. So I would give the edge there to the Ravens, mostly because of Justin Tucker.
Yeah, and I'll apply this caveat from yesterday because we played the clip of him talking about the incident from last year prior to the AFC Championship when he was out there getting in the pregame workouts of Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, and Kelce threw his helmet and threw the little tee and threw the balls. And as long as because he was a little cheeky and a little like, I'm saying what they're expecting me to say, as long as he doesn't stir things up again, I'll go with Justin Tucker. But one of the realities with the kickoff, and what I've done, peel back the curtain a little bit, for tomorrow night's pregame show, I'm trying to get a comprehensive understanding of what we can expect with this new kickoff. And I've spoken to many coaches, executives, etc., to try to figure this out. And one of the concerns that was raised to me, along with film clips that I have on my phone, one of which is scary. You better be careful with your kickers, because they kick the ball and they've got the ability to run up to where everyone else is, and one of those blockers comes free, and there's a clip of a Titans kicker getting blown the F up in that play. So that's going to be one of the things to watch. We heard about the possibility of teams using other players like Justin Reed, possibly being the kickoff specialist for the Chiefs, because then he can run right up into the fray and be an extra tackler. That hasn't come to fruition, in part because I don't think you can trust a non-kicker to consistently put the ball between the goal line and the 20 and not have it squirt out of bounds before it gets to the end zone, which puts it on the 40. Or we'd hear that someone was doing it. Now, maybe somebody's got a secret weapon who isn't a kicker that they're saving for week one, but I think they'd at least test that guy out in the preseason in a game setting. You know, some of the things they're going to do, we won't see until regular season. If you're going to have somebody other than your main kicker, I think we would have seen it preseason. But the bottom line is this: Justin Tucker, Harrison Butker, be careful once you kick off and run down toward where everyone is, because there's going to be somebody looking for you. And I've seen the clips of some kickers getting hit pretty damn hard in the preseason.
Well, that's a little bit of a concern. I mean, but that's part of why, and you know, you've been making the argument that if they really want this to be a thing, they got to change the touchback from the 30 to the 35. I mean, if that's also part of the risk of it, then as a head coach, you know, I'll just take the 30 and let's go play. Because all it needs is one to just really pop off and somebody to do something really creative. If you're the Dolphins and you got all these speed guys and you do something really creative and then you see that as a coach, I don't want to risk any of that. Especially because usually I think the return average was something about the 28 and a half in the preseason. If that's the case, then just give me the 30 and let's just go play defense. If I'm a head coach, I don't know if I want to deal with that.
It was the 28-8 for all kickoffs and the 28 for all kickoffs that were actually returned. The benefit is, and the term that you're going to hear if you watch the pregame show tomorrow night is risk reward, because that's what keeps coming back to me. You know, you're trying to do an analytical formula with no data, but that's the hypothetical that they're looking at. What is, based on the circumstances of the game, what's the risk and what's the reward? And one of the risks that you need to factor in is the possibility of your kicker getting blown up when he runs down the field, eager to try to make a special teams tackle. All right, so I'll say Ravens as well, but it's very close, and I think for both of us it's very close between Ravens and Chiefs. Better coaching between a couple of future Hall of Famers. I think they both get in at some point. Harbaugh's been around since 2008. Andy Reid has been coaching every year in the NFL since 1999. He's a no-brainer, walk right into the Upper Room Hall of Fame, and may catch Bill Belichick as the greatest coach of all time, especially, you know, if he continues to be joined at the hip with Mahomes and he keeps going for another 5 or 6 years. Who do you have right now as the better coach? And let's throw in the entire staff as well.
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, it kind of comes down to rings, you know, and if that's the case, then it's got to be Andy Reid. But, you know, we've been sort of talking about this, too. I mean, the edge between Spagnuolo and Orr, I mean, just experience-wise, got to go to Spags. I mean, Matt Nagy versus Todd Monken. I mean, you also have the experience factor there in terms of just being an NFL coach before. So I would kind of go with Nagy there, although I really like what Todd Monken has done with that offense, with the exception of the way he called it in the AFC Championship game. So I would go with the Chiefs, but I don't. Again, like any of these, it's kind of like, man, it's not like I'm trying to knock the Ravens here, because the Ravens are a great staff. They got really talented players, but when you're going against the champs, you're still going against the champs. And the Chiefs right now, they're the two-time defending champs.
Yeah, I think across the board, the better coaching staff. Again, this weird dynamic that Steve Spagnuolo never gets seriously mentioned as a potential head coaching candidate. He had that very short, disastrous tenure with the Rams, which really wasn't all his fault. I'm not making excuses for the guy, but the Rams were about as dysfunctional as any team has ever been during that period of time that Spagnuolo was the head coach. So I don't know whether it's that or, there's a general bias, I think, against defensive head coaches because you want a quarterback guru to be the guy that takes your young quarterback if you get a franchise guy potentially in the draft and you want to go forward. But, yeah, Spagnuolo doesn't get mentioned. Nagy had his stint with the Bears, which wasn't a complete disaster, but those guys are sticking around. At one point, Dave Tobe, the special teams coordinator, was mentioned as a potential head coaching candidate. Those guys have stayed in place. That gives the Chiefs the better overall staff and the edge there. So it looks like we're both going to – what a shock. We're both going to pick the Chiefs to win tomorrow night. Should have learned last year, though. And it was too late to change the pick. But I will say this. Last year when the Lions came out to take the field, I was just like, they seem upset. like there was just something in the air that was like somebody didn't give them the memo that this is Chiefs celebration night. And the Lions obviously went on to win the game.
Okay, you have a chance to win $1 million in the NBC sweepstakes on Yahoo Fantasy. Just download the redesigned Yahoo Fantasy app or go to NBCSports.com/fantasymillion for additional details. What are you waiting for?
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.